Welcome to the Stress Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon, and check out thestressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches, or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Equa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode, and I'm joined by my friend Elijah Desmond. And Elijah, this is not your first rodeo with me. I think this is at least your third episode with me. So, and I'm always excited to talk to you because you always have something new that you're up to. You're a serial entrepreneur, and I love your spirit and your energy. But thanks for coming back.
Yeah, happy to be here. New year, new light, new me.
That's great. It's always good to re-energize yourself with something new, and I want to get into all that you're up to. And I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be updating my third book, Stress Free Entrepreneur, and there's a story in there about you and your event helping me overcome my fear of public speaking. So just wanted to give a shout out there. But I'll let you know when that's hitting Amazon. But Elijah, let's talk about your new venture, Dental Pitch Brokerage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll start by saying that, like, if you have a practice right now and you are thinking about building yourself up to sell in the next 5 years, then this is something you should listen to. Also, just know that the things that we're doing with my brokerage firm are very, very non-traditional, which is like me and all of my businesses that I've ever started. I call them remixes. They're remixes of other things that exist already, and then I bring them into our industry and I make them extremely fun and completely different than what everybody else is doing. So just on a high level, if you don't know what a broker is, just know that it's somebody who can represent either the buyer of a business, specifically a dental practice, or the seller of a business. In this instance, we're talking about a dental practice. So for those of you who don't know what a broker is, that's what a broker or a brokerage firm does. I specifically represent the seller. So if you're looking to exit your practice, and notice I say within the next 5 years, I'm going to tell you the number one mistake. A lot of dentists, when they're done, meaning I want to just be done with work, that's when they'll call up a brokerage firm or they'll list their practice for sale. That is the wrong time to sell. That is the sure way to get as little as possible for your practice compared to if you would have sold in, let's just say, 3 to 5 years. So if you're thinking about selling in 3 to 5 years, the time that you want to talk to someone like myself is now, not later.
Now, what if I'm even a little further out? If I think that I've got, 5 to 10 years, is it never hurt to at least have that conversation to figure out a plan?
It does, absolutely, because see, a lot of people are focused on the collections in their practice and how much revenue they're bringing in, and that's really irrelevant. What you should be focused on is your EBITDA, and your EBITDA is the main priority when it comes to selling your practice, especially if you're talking about selling to a large group, a DSO, a private equity family office that's going to offer you significantly more than a private practice dentist. And so you need to talk now to me and not later. You don't have to we don't have to work together, but I'm happy to offer you free advice. And the number one thing that I would say, if I were to give you any advice, is work with a group to get your quality of earnings light, or just work with the group specifically to find out your EBITDA. And I'll be very clear when I say this. This is not something that you want to go to your CPA and get. Very little CPAs will give an accurate EBITDA. I'm not saying they can't, but very little do. You want to focus on the expert to get you the quality of earnings or to get you your EBITDA. It is very important to not just work with your regular CPA. In fact, when working with us, we recommend working with an outside company. Not recommend, we won't work with you unless you get a quality of earnings light, a Q of V. And I'll just give you an example. When you have your Q of V, that means that we have your sure EBITDA. The buyer is typically going to offer you at the bare minimum that they can to purchase your practice. It's a business transaction. You cannot be mad at them, right? And so they're going to offer you the minimal possible. So it's very important for you to know what you're worth. If you don't know what you're worth, then they're going to give you what they feel like, really. And if you're waiting until the end of your career, meaning you only have 6 months to practice, you want a year, then you're gone, you're pretty desperate to get out. Really. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And if you wait till that long, they sniff it up and they're going to offer you as minimal as possible to work with them. So it's super important for the people that are thinking about selling in, say, 5 to 10 years to reach out and just get free advice, because I've seen a lot. I'll give you an example. If you didn't work with a broker, okay? Say you didn't work with a broker and instead you went direct to the person who's going to buy you, or you are contacted by a cold email. Have we seen those? I mean, look, Eric, I'm even getting a crazy amount of emails to me. Are you looking to sell? You look to sell, you know? So, excuse me. So you go direct to, let's just call it group. Let's just say Guardian. I love Guardian. Talk about them. Or Heartland. I love Heartland, right? Say you go direct to them. And this is all of them. So this is not to name specific ones in general. They're going to have their team evaluate your practice. They're going to have your team evaluate your practice, and they're going to, or a business development person within their business, they're going to evaluate it. Well, don't you think like that you should look and get it evaluated as well? A lot of people, they say, okay, well, I'm happy to get whatever they'll give me. Well, you should probably know what it's worth. And so that's a common mistake. I'll tell you a real life mistake that did not happen with Guardian or Heartland. However, and we work with 55 buyers, by the way. So most of the big buyers we're working with. But this is a story that didn't happen with Heartland. I had a dentist that called me up, and the dentist said, hey, I was given an offer by this group. And I decided that I didn't want to take that offer. And but I was very close to selling. Well, the thing that she forgot to do, she forgot to see what her practice was valued at. So when we found out what her practice was valued at, it was earth-shattering, the offer that she was given, because they told her her EBITDA. She didn't know her EBITDA. She didn't have a quality of earnings. So had she taken that deal, man, she would have really left a lot on the table from taking that deal. And so that's why it's important for somebody who is the expert at this to specifically do the deal with you. And by the way, some people may say, hey, isn't that the guy from Smiles at Sea or Dental Festival? He's selling dental practices now? Well, yep. And I've actually moved over into another role with those companies. I'm the CFO, Chief Fun Officer, which it'll come full circle in a minute how I wrapped in fun to what we're doing with Dental Pitch Brokerage. Those of you who listen to past podcasts will probably crack up laughing, but it's really what we're doing. But anyways, my focus now is the dental pitch brokerage. That's my day to day. And then I will be on my cruise ships at the festival, but the focus is dental pitch brokerage specifically. And I'll explain that while I have the events world and all of the connections in our industry, like I have built not my bank account, that bad boy's been small, but my relationship bank account is huge. I mean, I am literally connected with majority of our industry, the right people in our industry that could ultimately help to serve you. Now I went into business. My business partner, his name is Matt Ornstein. Now, Matt Ornstein comes from the real estate side, the world of M&A. Our whole team comes from the world of mergers and acquisitions. And essentially, Matt Ornstein, he owns 68 dental locations. He started with 20 locations, and in 3 years, he's acquired 68. And while doing that, he's got a chance himself and his team to work with a lot of brokers out there. And I will tell you that there are things that we would never do because of what he learned. And there are also things that we would do. Overall, what I can tell you is that we're entirely different from working with another dental practice firm. I kind of want to start with the fun, Eric. Can I tell you how we're doing things different that's really fun?
Yeah, let's start with the fun.
So some of you know that I am a DJ. I have coined the word dentistry celebrity DJ. I've been in 6 different countries and 25 cities in the past 18 months, DJing dental conferences. I love music, okay? I'm obsessed with music, and no, that's not how I make my living. I do it for fun because I love music. So I figured out a way on how to incorporate music into the brokerage world, right? I'm calling it, we're remixing the brokerage space. So what happens is first off, we get your quality of earnings done. You get that quality of earnings prepared, and you come out to a dental event next year, okay? Call it either Women in DSO, DICMA, or another conference. And we actually fly you out there. And you are going to be in a room that is by yourself. It's a private event. Nobody knows about it, okay? So you're in a room, and you're waiting for us to text you that we're on our way to get you at this conference, at this hotel. We come and get you out of the main room that all the buyers are in, and you come into the room. As soon as you come into the room, your walk-on song is playing. You have a walk-on song, and you walk onto the stage, and in front of you will sit 10 very qualified buyers. And at that point, you're interviewed with me or my business partner, and you're asked questions about your practice that you will easily be able to answer. Things like, tell us how you got started and built this amazing business, right? It'll say, tell me how long do you want to stay at your practice for? We'll ask a question such as, do you have any specialties that you're doing in your practice? Are you doing your own implants? Are you doing sleep apnea? Are you doing ortho? We'll ask those questions. It's very easy. Then what happens after that is the buyers are then able to ask you, the ones that are interested, all the questions that they want about your practice. Now, the only thing that they're not allowed to talk about is financials, right? We understand that you may not be the P&L expert. You're not the accountant. You focus on doing dentistry. So they're not allowed to ask you that. That sticks with us. After they ask you all the questions that are non-financial, you'll leave the room. When you leave the room, what happens is that the buyers then on a sheet of paper write down the time slot they want to speak to you. They may want to speak to you at 12 to 12:30 or 12:30 to 1 to 1:30, 30-minute increments. Sometimes you may have as much as 10 buyers that want you in your practice, and they're ready to offer top dollar. After the event, we put the broker wall halfway up. And at that point, what we're doing when we put the broker wall halfway up is we're negotiating the best terms for you. So we're doing Zoom calls, and ultimately we're negotiating the best terms of the contract. And we're also negotiating the top dollar amount. And so we do that. We ask them to submit, the people who are interested, the buyers. We ask the buyers to submit their letter of intent. It's called a LOI. We ask them to submit that within a couple weeks of you pitching. And once you do that and they submit the LOIs, we then go back and forth with them to get you the highest terms and ultimately the best multiple of your dental practice.
Wow. So it's essentially like a pitch, similar to your, you've had some events similar to that, but this time it's the actual dentist that's pitching their practice to these buyers. Now, do the dentist, I'm assuming they need to come prepared with certain KPIs and numbers, how many active patients they have, and
Yep.
how many hours they've worked, and things of that nature?
Yes, and that is all done on a quality of earnings. So a quality of earnings will say your new patients, total active patients, payer mix. It'll give the past 4 years of your collections. It'll give the past 4 years of production, the past 4 years that your EBITDA has been at, and the margin within your practice. A healthy margin for your collections should be somewhere around 20%. Okay. 15%, you can sell at that, but you won't be as attractive, right? 20% is it's perfect. There are people though that are at 10%, and there's a few things that you can change to increase that EBITDA, or you may work with a practice coach that specializes in growing EBITDA for the next 6 months to a year, maybe even 2 years. At the end of the day, though, you need to know exactly where you're at, and the time to know where you're at is now. It's today. Just like the companies that are out there that are like a Dental Intel or a Practice by Numbers. Most practices are that most dentists that understand business or want to grow their business, they're going to use some software with metrics on it, data, right? So knowing your quality of earnings or knowing your EBITDA, having your quality of earnings, knowing your EBITDA, that is the most important metric that you can have when you go from let me be great at growing this business to let me get in the mindset to set myself up. So I know if I can sell now, I know that if I want to sell in 6 months, this should be my EBITDA. Or if I want to sell in 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years, at least you know what it is. So that way that you can improve it. A lot of people just don't know what it is, and they're stuck on collections, but don't realize that the EBITDA is really the most important piece of it all. And just so everyone is clear, and by the way, my business partner, Matt Ornstein, he wrote the official handbook on EBITDA, and happy to give that away free of charge. If you reach out to me at Elijah at dentalpitchbrokerage.com, or if you purchase it on Amazon, the ebook, all of the proceeds go to students, specifically dental students, 100% of the proceeds. So to know your EBITDA is very important. Also understand this: the higher the EBITDA, the higher the multiple. Some people call it a multiplier or the multiple. So for example, if you have call it a $200,000 EBITDA, your collections was $1 million, you have a $200,000 EBITDA, all right? Well, that $200,000 EBITDA, for example, it could sell for let's just say 3, 4, or 5 times multiple. So it's 200,000 times 5. That's $1 million that you would get on an exit. And it's super important to understand that most groups that buy you, or most practices, they will pay you anywhere between 50 and 80% realistically initially when they purchase. And then they're going to want you to do an earnout between, we'll call it minimum 2, but most likely 3 to 5 years. You'll get the remainder of that 50, 40, 30, 10%. Now, some people, some platforms or some groups will actually allow you to keep 10% or more in that platform, so you have a second crack or a second financial windfall.
Now, is all that negotiable? The wording or the negotiations of the earnout, is that all part of the process?
Yes, that's exactly what we do. And we, review everything that they send over, et cetera. We have 2 full-time attorneys that are absolutely free to the people that work with us. 2 full-time attorneys, LLMs, right? The highest level of law. And basically, we help them to figure out everything. This is, for example, if you were to do it yourself, you really wouldn't know, like you're not the expert on selling your practice. You might think, man, this is a big number. Well, what if you had a brokerage firm or a partner that is willing to go to bat and cross every T and, check everything off the agreement that makes sense? Now we negotiate on behalf of the seller. And the big difference is if you're trying to negotiate and you say, hey, I want to have 80% upfront of my practice, not 70%. You can try and negotiate if you're going to them by yourself, but chances of you actually being successful are not as high if say you were working with another broker or myself, right? And I had a total of 5 practices. And those 5 practices that I had, there was somebody that came in at, say, 70% of what your value is up front. Well, if I have 4 other people that are coming in at 80%, it's going to be really easy to tell that person, hey, we have 4 other offers on the table. Yours, while it's a good offer, it's only 70%. So they're more than likely to move to 80%. Right? Maybe another group wants to keep them on for, 5 years, and we've negotiated with 2 other contracts that will keep you on for 3 years. Right? And then we keep on, we bring it to the highest level. And so when you have negotiation power, it really matters. And you're getting what you deserve, the true value of your practice, which, bring me to another point. Listen, if you are done, you're just like tapped out, you're like, you know what? I'm not practicing it anymore. In 6 months, I want to be out of here. No, in that instance, it could make sense for you to sell to a private practice dentist that does want to take over. An associate, for example, that says they just want their own practice. Just understand that you're not going to get the same amount. A lot of these groups and private equity, et cetera, they have a lot of money to offer, and they have a lot of benefits to working with them in their platform to take you from where you're at now and busting you through to the next level, which is also something that's, very important.
Is that a big portion of the negotiation? Is if someone does get up there, they're pitching their practice, but they want to be done in a year or 2 years instead of that 3 to 5 years, which is more attractive.
That is absolutely the negotiations that do happen. I will tell you that a lot of the groups that we work with, they are interested in saying 3 to 5 years. A little bit less are people that want to leave in, say, a year. And it's just really about what they want. Like, if I tell somebody you're going to get an extra $2.5 million, I'm just staying on in, an extra few years. Anybody in their right mind is going to say, like, yes, unless they're so tapped out, of course they'll take that. 3 more years, that much more money. I'm throwing a number out there but that is possible depending on the size of your practice. Now, there are instances that we are selling, of practices that we're selling, that they have a group that, say, 15 locations. So right now we have a group that's 15 location. We have another one that's over 30 locations. And the owners of those groups, they're not practicing. We have another one that's 2 locations. They're actually not practicing. And they're not going to stay long-term. However, they will stay for, call it a year, in a role of consultant, or 6 months in a consulting role to help integrate the practices in, instead of just going all together. But I think more than anything, I think the most important piece for you to know is that when you sell the practice, you don't get that money up front. And there's something called an earnout. Earnout's very important. If you get 70% of your practice up front in the sale, and then you have 30% on an earnout, say you're supposed to save for 3 years, you will get that 30% in that 3 years, okay? But what's very important to understand is that before you sell a practice, you do not, especially if you're trying to sell in 6 months to a year, for example, you do not want to increase the weight, the amount of your work. You don't want to start busting your butt right before the way out to increase your EBITDA. That is not what you should do unless you plan on keeping that pace up after you sell, because you're going to be expected to keep the pace up after you sell. What's more smart is to cut from your bottom line. Okay, so if you're cutting from your bottom line, let's just say, I'm throwing a number out there, all of the stuff in your practice that you're using for procurement, your gauze and your stuff, your supplies. Say that's, throwing a number out there, say that's 10% of your practice. So say it's $100,000 and $1 million practice, making easy numbers. Well, if you can cut that in half, okay, and now it's $50,000, you save $50,000. Well, you're going to get that $50,000 is going to go straight to your bottom line. So that means $50,000. If you were to get a 4 times multiple, that's $200,000 more you would get on the sale of your practice. That's a lot of money. And so that's the way, cut from bottom line expenses. That's the way that you're going to grow your EBITDA fast if you're looking to sell what is called in the next 3 to 6 months. And we can help with that as well. But I think that the most important thing to know is if you go out all of a sudden, say you start working an extra day per week, and you tell your front office, schedule you at 7 instead of 8, and schedule you till 6 instead of 5, because you're trying to grow your EBITDA. Understand that whenever that group comes in and buys you, they're going to expect for you to maintain that same thing, that same EBITDA, the same number of collections. They're going to expect that from you. And if you do not deliver that, you're going to get less on your earnout. You're not going to get all your 20% or your 30%. You can get less or none. Super important to understand. Also, I want everybody to understand what arbitrage is and why that many people, and people call, oh, you're selling out to a DSO. No, you're not. You're not selling out. You're making a smart decision because you're getting a lot for your family. This is your life's work, and you're getting substantially more than you would have got if you sold to a private practice dentist. But let me make sure that everybody understands how the numbers work, okay? I'm going to say you have a practice that's $1 million in EBITDA, okay? That practice is $1 million in EBITDA. If you sold to a group, more than likely, you're going to get somewhere around a 5 times multiple or a 6 times multiple. What is that? That's 5 to 6 million. And your terms may vary. Okay. Now let's just call it 6 million. Now, when you sell that practice, the minute that you sign that asset purchase agreement to move in and they integrate you into their big portfolio, that portfolio is, if they were to sell today, their value would most likely be, and let's just say if it's a big group of, let's say if they're 15 million in EBITDA, and all that is 15 of you, 15 $1 million practices. Say if they're 15 million in EBITDA, more than likely they're going to sell for a 12 times multiple, 11 or 12 times multiple, minimum 10, probably maximum of, let's call it max 13 in this day, right? So as soon as they acquired you at 6 million, well, now if you do your same million EBITDA, you just stayed and maintained right where you're at. And you had now all of a sudden brought into a group that was trading at a 12 times multiple. That means that your same practices were $12 million now. Say you didn't do anything different. It's now valued at $12 million just from integrating you into their big group of practices. Now you can see easily why a group that, let's just say, where's to buy you, where they would be able to offer more than a private practice dentist. Because if a private practice dentist buys your practice, you're worth that 4 or 5 times multiple. If somebody else buys you a group, they know that they're going to pay that, say 5 or 6. They give you one more turn. That's a lot. And when I say one more turn, I mean going from a multiple of 4 to a multiple of 5. Another turn will be a multiple of 6. They know that they're going to be making $6 million just from acquiring you. So can they offer you an extra $1 million? Potentially. $500,000? Potentially. And the higher the number, the more wiggle room that there is. If you have a higher multiple, right, that means you had a higher EBITDA. If you have a higher EBITDA, the higher multiple. And so just understanding how the math works, like, why are these people selling? Why are they selling out? Come on, bro. They're not selling out. They're in it for their life. They've worked their whole entire life to be, living stress-free, right? To living a life of no stress, and they just want to practice. And somebody offered them literally double or more sometimes for their practice. Of course they're going to sell. This is why dentists that we're going to say, oh, we're going to sell in 5 years, or think about 3 to 5 years, they're talking about it now because they can practice stress-free now, take a lot off the table, take a huge payday, right? And then continue to work and get paid very reasonable, right? And these groups are paying the dentist somewhere between, let's just say, 25% and max 35% of what they're bringing in, right? And so ultimately, if they're doing that, you're still making really good money. You have no overhead, you have no headache, you have no stress, because now you're doing dentistry, and that's it.
And tell me about the buyers. You said you have 55 buyers. Are they all big, large groups, DSOs?
That's a great question. So the buyers that we're working with, a majority a majority of them are the large groups that can offer top dollar. Let me just explain. There's private equity, there's family offices, okay? There's emerging groups, and there are DSOs as well, some of them that are not private equity backed, right? But they are the big ones. That we have some ones that are smaller group practices that are, say, 2-3 locations, they want to grow to 10. We call them like, be like emerging groups.
And I think you nailed it with the earnout. I think that where a lot of dentists get that negative feeling about selling to a DSO is, you're right, they work their butt off to try to increase that EBITDA at the very end, and then they're expected to keep that high level of production, but then they just want to relax, and that's going to bite them. So I totally agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah, and let's just do math, right? Like let's do math so everybody can like clearly understand. Say you're at $1 million in EBITDA, right? And that if you're at $1 million in EBITDA, you're doing very well, right? A lot of offices are trying to get $1 million in collections, so $1 million EBITDA is very good. Let's say that the group purchases you at that $1 million in EBITDA, and then all of a sudden you lay off the gas. Okay, you laid off the gas, and now it's not, maybe it's not a big of a difference to you, but it is to them. You're at 800,000 in EBITDA. Okay, that's $200,000 less. Here's the kicker: they paid you a 6x multiple. So what's that mean? That means that 200 times 6 is $1.2 million. So that means that you took from them $1.2 million. You worked your butt off, you showed you could do this, but then you stopped. So you took from them $1.2 million. Okay. And that's very important to understand, because that is why you would get a less earnout. Right. And some people don't understand that piece. Like, I'm going to grow my EBITDA. No. You're going to grow, cut bottom line expenses. Don't try to just grow from top line. And so I think that's a huge lesson. Another piece of advice, this comes if you're going to work with a broker or you're not. Okay. Get your resources, check your resources. Let me throw a name out there. And say Heartland Dental. Now, I think most of us know Heartland Dental is known for having very good culture, very good reputation. Okay. But you should find out for yourself, right? So if you have a practice, you want to sell, and you skip over the broker, which I would not recommend, but you did it. Well, what happens is now what you do is you go out and you say, you find 3 Heartland locations and ask that dentist, how was your experience? Right? Were you happy with your sale? What's life 2 years, 3 years after? So many people are with them for way more than 5 years, and it's not like they're going to be getting rid of you, right? They're going to get rid of you. They want to keep you. You're the one that's making the money. And so it's important to understand that checking resources is extremely important.
Now, how often do you have these events, and is that the only time that you can pitch your practice, or can you do that anytime, or is it typically only at the events?
Great question. So we're having 5 events next year. So we do 5 per year. They're pretty scattered out. And those events are, we'll take a maximum of 10 sellers per event. Okay. Now, what's important to understand is prior to the event, you need to be, you have your quality of earnings done, all of your financials in, everything. So we're very clear. We create something that's like a tear sheet. It's a 1 page of all the information, the most important data. So that way the buyers can understand this. But there are some people, man, they don't even like this. Even though it's a private, confidential room, they don't like the stage. I haven't met not one person that says they don't like music, though.
Yeah, music will get you pumped up regardless.
Yes, exactly. But I can tell you that there are some people that say, I would rather skip, going to the event. Hey, Dental Pitch, save the flight, etc. Instead, I would rather you get a quality of earnings done for me. And when we're done, I want to push this out to all 55 of your buyers. We can do that. And we do it. We do that as well. However, I will tell you from personal experience, that is more traditional. It's a more traditional route. I will tell you that the in-person events are loved by so many for the main reason. Typically when you work with a broker will keep the broker wall up for a long time. Okay. meaning you do not get to talk to any of the sellers, especially at first. It's going to be a long way down the road, but the fact of the matter is that sometimes that person or that group you were going to sell to, when you finally get to meet them in person or a Zoom, you're thinking to yourself, there's no way I would work for this person or work for this group. No, there's no way. I wish I would have met them a long time ago, because now that I've met them early or late, I wish I would have met them a long time ago. If I would have done it earlier, I wouldn't have wasted my time. And I'm telling you, there are often times where you get to end of the deal and there's things that pop up. And one of those things we don't think should be the culture fit, the personality fit. That's so important. Figure that out day one. You may not be a good fit for them. They may not be a good fit for you. And oftentimes the deals are pulled because of cultural fits. It is important. It is important. It's very important. And so the fact that we're putting the buyers and sellers together immediately this way with the events is a major advantage to both the buyer and the sellers. They get to know each other. They love it. It's been such a good experience. And I like that over the regular one, but we absolutely can work the traditional route as well. We've considered doing a virtual event. We've thought about it. We have not done it yet. But we considered doing a similar style, but virtually as well. A lot of times when you're not in front of, those 10 buyers, it can be a little bit less. And it's not really like intimidating. These buyers are standing up, they're clapping for you while you're walking on the stage, but it's just better that way, I think. However, we could set up a situation where you are able to see the buyer sooner.
Yeah, that's great. Elijah, let's wrap up with two final questions. Number one is, how do we find out more about the Dental Pitch Brokerage? What's the best contact to reach out to you? And then number two, what are you seeing that successful dentists, especially with their exits, are doing versus some that have made some mistakes regarding their exit strategy? Give us some tips on how we can be successful with our exit.
Yep. I want to say that the first thing, and I'll give you the tips before I say how to get a hold of me. The first way to be successful is hire a coach, okay? And that coach that focuses specifically on EBITDA. So they're used to it. They're used to selling to the groups, right? Getting you prepared to sell to the groups, and they're focused on your EBITDA. That's the number one thing. And I'm going to tell you a reason and put it in perspective. Let's just say if you work with, and there's multiple we work with, but I'm going to use an example of Tower Leadership, okay? And say you're working with Tower Leadership and Eric Morin, and let's just say that their cost to get you to where you want to be, I'm going to call it 2 years. Their cost is, this is not a right number, but I'm going to throw it out there, $50,000, okay? And they work with you for $50,000. You work them for 2 years. That's $100,000, okay? And what they do is they grow your EBITDA for those 2 years. They grow your EBITDA from 500,000 EBITDA. They grow it to 800,000 EBITDA. That's a $300,000 difference. 300,000 times, let's just call it a 6 times multiple or a 5 times multiple. That is $1.5 million. So put it in perspective. If you invested $100,000 to get 1.5 million, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Now, here's the best part. There's something called add backs, okay? In EBITDA, which is essentially net profit, right? Plus you're going to add back in taxes, amortization, depreciation, et cetera. But what's very important is that is considered an add back. That means that you get to take the 100,000 or 50,000 and add it back into what the multiple is, which is it's like a one-time expense. You buy a cone beam, a one-time expense. You see what I'm saying? And so if you're going to, that would be the best route is hire a coach, number one. But number two, get your quality of earnings light or your EBITDA, and that can prepare you to get ready to sell. But hire the expert. Don't just get a typical practice management coach. It's a regular practice management coach. They're doing a really good job at teaching you how to grow your practice. Growing your practice is not necessarily growing your EBITDA. And knowing that is very important. And I know plenty of coaches that focus on that, depending on the size of the practice. So that's the answer to your first question. The second question is how do you get a hold of us? First off, for those of you who know me, may know I'm very active all over social media. That is me. When you send me a private message, you can get a hold of me like that on social media, or you can go to dentalpitchbrokerage.com and you can give us a call, or you can fill out a form and make sure that you mention Blocky on the list on who referred you. It's nice to always reach out and say thank you for that, and let me know that you heard about us in this podcast. Also, Elijah at dentalpitchbrokerage.com is my direct email address. And then my website is dentalpitchbrokerage.com. Any of those ways you reach out, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, I'm very responsive and I'm happy to help in any capacity. And let me be very clear. We don't work with all practices. You have to qualify. But I will tell you what I want you to know. Advice is free. Okay? A phone call with me is free. Okay, so regardless if you are a good fit for us or not, okay, you have to qualify. But if you are a good fit, we'll take you. If not, I'm going to give you free advice. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm definitely not going to inflate anything. So make sure that you know what you're reading. Some people read things like offices are going for a 10 times multiple. That is not true. It's not. Maybe for a very, very big practice, 10 million EBITDA, 15 million EBITDA and above. But practices that are your normal practices that are, $1 million to 5 million in collections, 6 million. I'm sorry, but that just simply doesn't exist today. And they hear it and they think that, oh, since this practice is sold for a 10 times multiple, all of them, nope, they can't. So point is I'm happy to give you free advice, answer any questions that I can for you. And as I mentioned before, my business partner himself, he's done it, 60 to 68 locations. He knew what it was like, knows everything. Our entire team knows what it's like to help. And not to mention, he's also in real estate, right? He's got 9 car washes. He builds commercial real estate and all types of, but basically it's between the two of us and our team, we can get you the exact advice that you need. And if for some reason I don't know it, I will reach out to my team to help me with that. And I'm happy to serve anybody who is interested in chatting.
That's great. Elijah, such a great episode. And I think you've really hit some great points about, to do this sooner than later and really find out, what you're worth and get that information from a specialist that specializes in this. So Elijah, great job. Such a great episode. And everyone out there, dentalpitchbrokerage.com. Thanks again, Elijah.
Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.